All right, we're going to go ahead and get going here. Welcome again to a look under the hood inside Data.org's new maturity assessment. My name's Andrew Means. I'm the founder of Good Tech Fest and a proud supporter of the work that Data.org is doing. I'm really excited to share more about this data maturity assessment tool with everyone over the course of the next hour or so. We have a great panel lined up. Folks ready to talk about how data maturity looks like in their organizations and what this work actually looks like on the ground. But I'm very excited for you all to join us. Just a couple of housekeeping things. We're keeping everyone's cameras and everything off. If you have questions throughout today's webinar, feel free to drop those into the Q&A. We'll be keeping an eye on those and trying to address those as we see them and as they come about. But with that, I want to invite Ginger, the Chief Strategy Officer of Data.org, to join me. And we're going to just talk a little bit about the work that Data.org is doing and the data maturity assessment. Ginger, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. Hey, Andrew, how's it going?
Good, good. Always good to see you. I was wondering if you could just, for those unfamiliar with Data.org, could you share a little bit about what Data.org is all about and what you all are trying to do?
Sure, absolutely. And just a quick shout out to everyone that you're going to get to chat with today. Thank you to our panelists. First and foremost for all of your amazing work, but secondly for sharing your story. So Data.org is a somewhat new initiative. We're about 2 years now, so a definite toddler. And we really are committed to building the field of data science for social impact. And the way in which we seek to do that is really being a platform for partnerships. The problems that we seek to tackle and the mechanisms that we need to deploy to do it require all of us, and that's our friends from the private sector, academia, philanthropy, government, and our social impact organizations. So we really seek to be a neutral platform to build the capacity to understand what's possible, to think about public goods, all in the spirit of using data science to tackle society's greatest challenges.
No, I love that. It's part of like why I love getting to work with you all at Data.org is just the importance of creating like a shared space where we can really put up resources that are helpful in helping organizations improve their maturity when it comes to the use of data and data science. And one of the things that I think I want to make sure folks know about is the resource library that Data.org has launched. Could you share just a little bit about the resource library before we get into the assessment?
Sure. And what we heard from practitioners and leaders across the space is like, I know I need to make these investments. I know I need to change how I work. How the heck do I do it when I'm operating, on a program budget where I don't have the money or time to really understand the field of data science? So we really committed early to making sure that information was more accessible. And thanks to our amazing team at Data.org and partners in the space, we began to curate a resource library. And the goal was not to have everything under the sun. It was really to be a highly curated, accessible, easy to understand set of resources and guides that could help organizations better be able to find supports and learning and tools to help them build their data science capacity, team, culture.
Awesome. And could you share a little bit about why Data.org decided to invest in a maturity assessment tool like this? What are you hoping that it accomplishes, and how are you hoping organizations utilize it?
Sure. In terms of why we invested in creating the tool, maybe it makes, well, first let me tell you why, and then we can take a quick little video to really describe it. So there were really two reasons that we wanted to create a tool. One, we wanted to help organizations provide like a balance sheet or a snapshot approach of where they are related to their data maturity and what could they do to continue to improve. So that's why we've connected the data maturity assessment to then some curated resources that's like, hey, you may want to think about building your data-driven culture. Here's a great resource from another expert in the space to help you be able to do that. Or, hey, you're underinvested in your cybersecurity, as lots of us have been. Here's how you can really think about investing in your security infrastructure. And then the second piece that we wanted to do is like, you can't turn around without talking about an organization becoming data driven right now. It's a really hot topic. That said, we've got to continue to build our knowledge base about what organizations need and how we can help. And that's for our public sector partners, that's for academia, that's for philanthropy. So really getting that market sector knowledge about what are the trends and how we can support this shift and transformation was another really important component of building the data maturity assessment. But for an inside look, maybe it makes sense to roll the clip.
Hi, thanks for joining me today. I'm excited to share Data.org's newest tool, the Data Maturity Assessment. I'm David Mascarina, the Digital Content Lead here at Data.org, where we're building the field of data science for social impact. Working with social impact organizations and funders, we're creating a digital platform with tools and resources to advance the use of data in the sector and accelerate impact. We created this data maturity assessment to provide organizations with a pulse check, helping them measure and understand where they stand today on their data journey. Curious what they mean by data journey? It's your organization's use of data as a capability, enhancing your impact by improving efficiency and effectiveness. The assessment measures data practices across 10 competencies like strategy, leadership, infrastructure, security, and ethics. These competencies are grouped under 3 main areas of an organization's data practice: purpose, practice, and people. Now, let's begin. At first, the tool asks a few questions about the organization. This information is not displayed on the results page, and this data is not shared with anyone without your explicit and prior permission. As you move through the tool, you'll find that the questions are divided into 3 dimensions of a successful data strategy: purpose, practice, and people. Your responses are saved along the way, and you can move back and forth between these sections. Also, you may use these handy tools to provide context and additional information without interrupting your progress. In total, the assessment takes about 12 minutes to complete. Once you complete the assessment, you arrive at the results page, which shows your organization's data maturity score based on your responses. The first element you'll see is an organization's archetype, in this case, data guided, along with your organization's scores within people, practice, and purpose. As you scroll down the results page, you'll see purpose, practice, and people scores broken down into more details across 10 subcategories. You'll also find guides and resources from Data.org's resource library. These guides and resources are based on your responses and provide you with the specific approaches to help you expand your data knowledge and capabilities. The results page is designed to be shareable. Share your results with your colleagues, organization leadership, or even boards and funders to provide insight to your current state and identify areas for investment. You can share the specific results for your organizations with others by either copying and sharing the URL or by printing the results. The results page also offers more ways to share these tools with others through your Twitter account, LinkedIn, Facebook, and email. If you'd like to learn more what your results mean, visit our data strategy guide to learn more. Curious about what to do next with your results? We've also compiled recommendations in this helpful guide, interpreting and acting on your results. And that's it. This assessment takes about 12 minutes, so please give it a try and let us know what you think. We welcome questions or comments through our Contact Us page. Thanks for taking a few minutes to learn more about our data maturity assessment tool. We hope you find this useful in your organization's data practice as you continue your pursuit in using data for good. And finally, sign up to receive Data.org's newsletter to receive opportunities and updates from the Data Science for Social Impact community.
That gives you a little bit of a look at what the maturity assessment is like. Ginger, could you talk a little bit about how you're hoping organizations use this assessment to drive, greater maturity and greater practice in their organizations?
Sure. So, it really is a journey to become fully data-driven, and often it starts out with a project or with measurement and evaluation as its start. And then there's increasing opportunity to think about how you can use data to drive your strategy, to implement your programs, to strengthen your evaluation, to better understand your value proposition in the market. And so this tool is really helps you to understand what is the team that you need. How are you thinking about data within your strategy? How should you, be considering it? I think some of the mistakes that we often make is that your data strategy is over here on the side. And we're here to tell you it cannot be a side hustle. It really has to be integrated in how you operate and how you work as an organization. And so a lot of what we're talking about is about organizational change, which is why we were really comprehensive and holistic in how to think about this assessment, that it isn't just, hey, are you using, deep learning? It's really about how are you thinking about the culture of the organization, how you make decisions, how you drive strategy, how you invest in your technical infrastructure, and how you think about ethics, and how you make those decisions and who you include. Those are all parts of your data strategy. And it is so in thinking about those three categories, it was really a way for us to try to be as comprehensive and holistic as possible as we think about our sector unleashing the power of data to again solve the specific problem statements of organizations across the globe.
And it's really built around these three pillars of purpose, practice, and people. Can you talk a little bit about how those pillars came about and how you're, why those three areas, I guess, to focus in?
Yeah, well, my favorite of the P's has to be people, just because, with the power of an amazing team, we'll continue to make progress and we'll continue to drive impact. That said, it's probably the hardest. Bringing together our colleagues from data science and our subject matter experts from social services or social policy and getting them to speak the same language, that takes time and it takes care and dedication and leadership. And that is really which then becomes culture. And so thinking about how we group them all together under people was I think paramount for understanding how to actually do this well, right? So another way we kind of think about it is like who, how, and why, and what, right? So if the people's the who, how and why is the purpose. And again, I think that the purpose component was really pulling data science to be on the side, to being integrated and really thinking about your strategy and your operations and your programs, right? So it's strategy, program implementation, execution, and operations. This is where I'll pause also to say, the more I learn from colleagues in the space, the more it's like, you've got to have strong financial operating systems if you want to be able to pull that internal data before we even start thinking about external data, which is why we need to think about how we're investing differently. We've all been taught to operate on a shoestring. And what we're really understanding is in order to take advantage of this shift in data available, we have to make sure that our own data is really good and accessible as well. So that's part of how we think about purpose. So it's both your programming and who you're serving or how you're serving, but it's also then about your own internal operations as well. And then practice. This is about, to use, I'm sure a lot of us have heard that commercial, like this is, yeah, we're talking about practice. This is about kind of the routines and efforts and the prioritizations of how we invest. You will not build your data stack in a day. It will take time, and it will take both learning from the past and thinking about the future and being able to build for that future. So your governance and the principles by which you think, like how you not only write them, but practice them is extremely important. How you think about not just the infrastructure that you want, but how you're going to build and how you're going to get there. That all takes time. And so we really wanted to lay it out within those three categories in order for people to see that this isn't just, you know, a little project on the side. This is really a transformation in how we work as teams, as an organization, as a sector. You can tell I get a little bit amped about this, Andrew, so I'm sorry I'm taking more time than I should.
Oh, that's great. I mean, that's exactly, I think, a great point, right? That this can't be, you know, your data strategy can't be like appended on to your organization. It needs to really be central to the ways that we work. I think the organizations that I've seen that I think are kind of the most mature and that are doing the most innovative work in this space are the ones that really see data as central to how they work. They see it as a part of everyone's job, right? And they're building everyone's capacity, and it's not going to look the same. Not everyone's going to be a data scientist, but like everyone needs to be able to work with and understand and interpret and utilize data.
Exactly.
And it needs to be rooted in the strategy of the organization. You know, really, you know, how are we creating change in the world, and the ways in which data can effectively be a part of that. How it doesn't need to be the whole way, but it is, there's a role for data to play throughout your organization. So Ginger, thank you so much. I'd love to call up our panel. We have people from different organizations of different maturities and sizes and program types joining me. Thank you all for jumping on today's webinar. Tennille, I'd love to start with you. You're from Swipe Out Hunger, and I'd love for you just to share a little bit about what Swipe Out Hunger is doing.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for having me today. I'm a self-proclaimed data nerd that found her home in communication, so I'm super excited to talk to you all. Swipe Out Hunger is the leading nonprofit addressing student hunger in the US. We started in 2010 when our founder and CEO, Rachel Sumek, was a student at UCLA and saw that while her campus had the state-of-the-art dining facilities, some of her peers were experiencing food insecurity. And so she worked and developed this coalition on campus between the admin and student government to develop campus programs that really helped address our classmates' food insecurity. And today we've grown from that one program at UCLA to over 435 campuses in all 50 states. And we've really evolved to meet the need that we are seeing within our community. So we do that through our on-campus solutions, which is one is our Swipe Drive, which is a meal donation program where students can donate their meals to their peers who are facing food insecurity on campus. We also work with campuses on their food pantries and make sure that we're supporting them there. And also with SNAP enrollment opportunities. So how can we make sure that students that are eligible can actually access one of the nation's leading defenses against hunger? We also work in policy and advocacy, both in supporting federal legislation that will help end student hunger, along with state-based legislation. Swipe Out Hunger authored the Hunger-Free Campus Bill in 2017 in California. It's passed in 5 states since then and introduced in 8 others. And finally, our program was started by students for students. And so student empowerment is really that last piece that is really central to our work. We offer trainings and webinars with timely and relevant information for our students to lead on campus and beyond. We really share our resources of best practices. So somebody that's just coming in can really see what the best practices are to implement on their campus. And we also have an annual student summit where we bring together our amazing thousands of leaders across the US to really just connect and network and learn from one another. And to date, we've served 2.5 million meals to students and passed more than 70 million in legislation to address student hunger. So that's Swipe Out Hunger.
Awesome. And could you share a little bit about how does data play a role? How has Swipe Out Hunger embedded kind of this data perspective across its work?
Absolutely. We really rely heavily on data to tell the story of our movement. So this is even beyond Swipe Out Hunger. Everyone is very familiar with the starving college students eating ramen noodles to really get through college. And though we've had that anecdotal evidence for decades, it wasn't really until this empirical evidence came forward that people really started taking that issue seriously. And the same goes at Swipe Out Hunger. So as our network grew, even when we were just a 3-person team, we took data on internally and surveyed all of our campus partners to say, hey, what was the impact of the programs that you all led on your campuses? What are those best practices? What could have been better? And how can we help you in the future? And that has really blossomed into an ongoing evaluation that we do. And it's both from our students who are accessing the program, so students who are experiencing food insecurity that have gone to a food pantry or benefited from the swipe drive. And in addition to our campus leaders who are both administration and student leaders. And we want to learn, hey, how did you run the program? What was the reach like? Where did you run into any pitfalls? And how can we support you better? And what's really nice about that is that it not only tells us just what's happening at the campus level, especially with as wide of a reach as we have today, but it also allows us to have opportunities to refine and retool our approach to better meet the needs of our campus community, which really comes into play when students are saying we really want to have more meals available for our peers on campus, and maybe their admin doesn't know that there's not enough there. And then finally, we really center data when we bring on new initiatives. Back in October, we acquired the College and University Food Bank Alliance. And the very first thing that we did was survey our campus partners and to really understand how they operate, what best practices they center, and what they need support with. And of course, that informs exactly how we work with those campus pantries, what we offer to them, and how we can really just lift up the great work that they're doing.
Yeah, I think you touched on something that I think is so important for many organizations. You said even when it was just an organization of 3 folks, you decided to take on this kind of collection of data, use these insights to inform your programming, and develop from there. And I think it's so important for organizations to recognize that just being kind of curious and asking good questions and going out and collecting the information to answer those questions is such a huge part of developing kind of that data-driven culture. A lot of times when I've talked with organizations, I actually recommend start by investing in culture, invest in these kinds of practices. They can be rudimentary. It can be, surveys that you just send via email and you're analyzing the data in Excel. You don't need big, powerful tools. But I think, what you all have done at Swipe Out Hunger is such a great example of developing a culture that values this kind of information. And I'm curious if you could just share a little bit about where did that come from? Was that, from the people that founded the organization? Who really helped bring in that kind of data culture to Swipe Out Hunger?
Absolutely. It was that core team, definitely the founder and our former director of programs, who said, we're reaching dozens of campuses right now, and we know that we could reach even more, but we don't have the data to back it up, to go to other campuses and say, hey, we're seeing that students are hungry on your campus, because nationally 1 in 3 students are, and we really want to help you. And so beyond just proving that there's a need there, we wanted to say, and this is how our programs are addressing that. And that has been hugely successful in terms of our growth. And I encourage everyone to check out our most recent impact report at swipehunger.org to really hear more about the ways that we're addressing that.
Awesome, Sunil. Thanks so much. And just a reminder for everyone on the call, if you have questions for our panelists, drop those into the Q&A. I saw some questions come through about the assessment itself, and Ginger will be back at the end of our panel, and we'll be addressing some of those questions as well. So keep those questions coming in. But Elisa, I'd love to turn it over to you to share a little bit about Benefits Data Trust. And for those that are unfamiliar with Benefits Data Trust, what's the work that you all are involved with in doing?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. So Benefits Data Trust is a national not-for-profit dedicated to improving the way people gain access to benefits to pay for critical needs like food and healthcare. And so people may wonder, well, why does that need to exist? But the truth is that right now, more than 1 in 10 Americans are living in poverty. And even though that's the case, there's more than 9 million people missing out on benefits and leaving an estimated $60 billion on the table. I think there's a lot of reasons why this happens. A lot of folks don't know benefits exist, or maybe they have misinformation that makes them think that they're not eligible. Application processes can be confusing, often demeaning. Imagine just needing to go to 3 different websites or having to visit multiple offices in person, all to roughly answer the same 30 questions. So BDT really approaches this challenge in several different ways. We directly serve people, and we reach out to them using data, and we also help them apply. We have a contact center that helps them to apply. We do make tools and training available to others who provide assistance with benefits, such as community organizations, healthcare, and higher education institutions. We also help government make reforms to streamline access to benefits. That includes helping them unlock their own data, and really working to test and document and share best practices across the field. So, across all of those areas of work, a lot of it centers around enabling data sharing with government, healthcare, and other entities. We've been able to develop more than 40 data sharing agreements over the years. But I think really sharing data for outreach and enrollment, it really improves the process and helps break down 2 of the biggest barriers to enrollment: awareness and complexity. And states, they spend tons of money requiring information from people that are already on other benefit programs. Data sharing creates the opportunity to really leverage what someone has already provided when they're enrolled in another benefit. And a lot of states, if someone's on Medicaid, they generally don't have to provide proof of residency, for example, or identity, and even income in some cases. So, through all of these different strategies, since our inception, BDT has been able to facilitate nearly 800,000 enrollments, worth an estimated $9.1 billion for households nationally. So, it's pretty important work.
No, absolutely. And I think of BDT as being a great organization that's invested in data across the organization. And so just like I asked Tennille, I'd be curious, how does BDT utilize data across all of its decision making and the ways in which it helps identify folks for services and for benefits and goes about the work that it does?
Yeah, I would say that there's sort of 2 reasons why BDT really puts an emphasis on data. One is scale, similar to Tennille. Data has been really foundational to BDT's work. We started by sort of conducting screenings for benefits in health centers and trying to find those people who are eligible. But ultimately, our driving factor was really wanting to help more than a few hundred people per year. And so our founder really drew upon sort of data targeting and outreach tactics from the private sector to effectively find hundreds of thousands of people who needed benefits and weren't enrolled. So really, by being able to work with our government agencies and be able to say, okay, there's a group of people that are getting a benefit over here, and if we look over at who's getting SNAP, for example, to help pay for food, hey, there's a group of people that are missing out. We need to make sure that they're connected. So really using that data to identify the people. I think that's a key piece. I think also, BDT is an innovative organization and we're always changing. And in order to do that, we have to always be learning from what we do and being able to evolve. And the reason that we do that is because we want to continue to provide a dignified client experience. We really see that, older adults, for example, in frontier counties in Colorado are going to need a totally different experience than someone in going to community college in Philadelphia. And so, thinking about sort of our roots, and I really appreciated what you said, Andrew, around sort of like it's okay to start kind of where you are, because when we started, I think I was probably right out of school and, teaching myself a statistical program and doing some data matching, right? We've come a long way. Fast forward 16 years later, with all these new ways to communicate information and looking at across text and social media, and with all the machine learning capabilities that are out there, data is even more critical to achieving both personalization and scale.
I love that kind of call out of like how you've matured over time. Because I do think of BDT as being such an advanced organization today, run its use of machine learning and data science and data sharing and governance, but it really begins more simply, right? Like every organization can think about using evidence in its work. Every organization can think about what's the next thing I can do around collecting information and utilizing that information to improve our program and our work. And I think BDT shows like those investments pay off over time, and you can kind of, continue to grow your maturity step by step by step. Paul, I'd love to turn to you now and hear a little bit about the St. Louis Regional Data Alliance. And could you talk some about the work that you're doing with them in that community?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey everyone, Paul Sorensen. I run an initiative called the St. Louis Regional Data Alliance. We're housed out of our public university in St. Louis, University of Missouri, St. Louis. And we run a data collaborative. And so our mission is twofold. One is to support strong data actors. We have a community, a membership of over 360 members in St. Louis, working with them on a variety of activities, sort of organized under a banner of a community of practice. So what are the sort of networking or community building things that they need access to? Education and training opportunities, which brings us into partnership with Washington University's Data Science for Social Impact initiative that Data.org and MasterCard also support. But then also working with them to try to figure out like, what are the tools, what are the skills, what are the conversations you need to have in your work across organizations and across sectors to really have a data-informed practice focused on community well-being and racial equity. So that's sort of, one kind of big leg of our mission. The other big leg of our mission is building shared data infrastructure. So asking questions about what tools and practices people need to connect data across sectors, organizations, and geographies. And I know we're on the call today with a lot of folks using a lot of data for good, right? And one of the things we've really recognized is that those of us who are mission-oriented, in order to achieve our mission on a community-based level, we have to work with others, right? No one organization, or even most of the time, no one sector really can tackle these important social challenges on our own. So how do we collaborate across sectors, organizations? And what we find is that, high trust relationships at the local level are really where we get to see many of those intersections really take flight. So work a lot on sort of what are shared standards or shared data tools that can facilitate referrals, those sorts of things, from a data infrastructure standpoint. Including qualitative data infrastructure. So how can we amplify community voice in order to connect these many data dots for good?
I think it's so important, the work of like data collaboratives and this kind of shared infrastructure, especially in the social sector where we can benefit from pooling resources, benefit from shared insights, and really our work is inherently so collaborative. And from that perspective, you have the opportunity to work with like lots of different organizations in the community. And I'd be curious your thoughts on how you're seeing data maturity evolve and grow across the sector more generally, kind of across the different partners that you're working with.
No, and I'll echo Ginger and other panelists in saying how much more of a topic, an important topic this is at organizations, sort of regardless of whether you are working with a small social service organization or a larger local government or a university of varying sizes. And I don't know, we have silos of one person at university, so it becomes a little bit difficult. So the conversation is heating up, right? But people are on dramatically different pages. And so it's an interesting question. It's a good question of sort of like, how does this data maturity conversation really fit, some of this collaborative work? And so one thing I want to say is that the tools like the data maturity tool can be very useful internally when we try to figure out, well, where are we and what do we need to invest in our own work, in our own organization, in developing data practices. But one of the things that excites me is how this sort of tool can be used as a common language to help people across organizations and across sectors identify and sort of co-develop how they end up addressing data maturity together. And just sort of as a quick example, right? If you're providing services for the unhoused, right? And maybe you are a homeless shelter who, yes, it matters a lot what your data maturity is internally. But if your partner who provides mental health services to the same people that you serve have data maturity practices in a dramatically different state, ultimately your own data maturity matters less. And so I'm excited to see tools like this and conversations like this, not only from like an internal quality improvement standpoint, but also from like a shared measurement and common language standpoint that really can help us define and walk a road together.
I think that's such a good call out that this kind of tool provides that shared language. It gives us an opportunity to understand, like, how do we all fit together? What are the strengths that each of us are bringing to these kinds of collaborations? And because I do think, so many communities now have their own kind of like data sharing infrastructure organizations, groups that are doing these kinds of data collaboratives. And I think this kind of understanding of our own strengths and weaknesses is such an important part of being able to collaborate effectively with others. Lisa, I'd love to go back to you and hear a little bit about Benefits Data Trust continuing kind of evolution and maturity. As you think about the future, where do you hope BDT continues to grow and mature in its own use of data?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really is going back to that sort of personalization issue. I think for us, we've recently started some work with using a tool called Wyatt that helps college students and folks applying for grants for college to complete the FAFSA. So at the end of the day, what we're talking about is we have BDT's contact center and we're able to help people apply. But there's only so far that we can take that, right? There's a limit to the number of people that we can staff in the contact center. And so we have to be thinking about different ways to support individuals across the country to make sure that they're accessing benefits, which means we have to change our approach to reaching them and supporting them. So it really is, thinking about what's the best way to use data. And Wyatt is a really great way because it's using natural language processing. To really, learn and evolve and improve how it supports answering those questions that people have about how to complete the FAFSA. So I think for us, we're looking at more opportunities to really think about data allowing us to reach that scale and that personalization. And I think, from our perspective, there's a lot of work we still need to do. So I think while we have, again, these questions and these ideas and these goals, we really do want to double down on, the same core elements of this data maturity assessment, right? It is about thinking about, okay, for this next evolution, who are people? What skills do they need? What are the ways that we should be continually standardizing our data and validating our data? And, what are we thinking about in terms of, how do we need to sort of evolve our platform and tools so that we can continue to sort of take this new information and really, achieve even greater impact?
No, I think that's great. And I think it shows, like, every organization, there's always that next thing that you're wanting to invest in, that next frontier. Tennille, I'd love to return to you. And you were one of the early users of the data maturity assessment. You got to try it out before it was even launched. And I'd just be curious, how has using a tool like the data maturity assessment helped you think about, Swipe Out Hunger's own data maturity and the places it might want to grow and continue to move?
Absolutely. Well, it's also just a really beautiful tool and really user-friendly and not too time-consuming. I think even just, I'm a comms person, so the language is really accessible. You don't have to be a data scientist to really understand, what it's asking and where you should really put yourself on that spectrum. But I also think it just really held a mirror to our data collection process. So I shared already that we were a really small team when we had started collecting data. And we evolved and professionalized that certainly over time, over the last 4 or 5 years. But I think it really just helps us see our blind spots. And I know like one piece is really how do we level up our practices to really ensure like the best integrity and of course maturity. So of course, protecting and securing our data with stronger cybersecurity, which of course I know is a thing, but it was really nice that there was tools available to say, this is how you can start taking those steps. This is what it looks like. And then, yeah, to kind of another pin on the common theme here is really just creating that culture of data. I think as we're growing, we just welcomed 2 new team members today. We're now 12 full-time staff, which is very different from a 3-person team. And so as we're making that slow growth happen, how are we really bringing in all of our team members to understand that we are a really data-centered organization and making sure that they're contributing to that, and also when we need other experts to come in to really help, again, level that up. And so, and then last thing I'll say, the 3 prongs is really interesting too, because I realized, wow, Swipe Out Hunger is so good on the purpose. We're really clear on why we're collecting data. We're really clear on how we're using that. But we had opportunities to really strengthen our practice and people categories, again, namely in cybersecurity, and also just making sure it doesn't fall on just a few teammates, but rather it's an effort on behalf of the whole team.
That's awesome. And it's great to be able to see, to have that mirror, to be able to see like, all right, where am I strong? What areas might want to continue growing in, like cybersecurity? Paul, I'd love to return to you with one more question. For organizations that are just beginning and starting out on their kind of data maturity journey, what advice would you offer them? Like, how would you, what advice would you give to organizations that are just kind of stepping out into that data maturity journey?
Absolutely. Well, look, I think it's really important to hear from organizations like, Benefits Data Trust that have been doing this for a long time that like, look, we are still on a journey. This is something that we're probably never going to be done with, but it's really important that we try and that we lean on each other and sort of learning these skills together, right? Like, yeah, we oftentimes work with smaller organizations, social services, et cetera, that if they have a data team, it's like one part of one person. And it's really important to make sure that they're connected to other data practitioners who may or may not be at their own organization, but ultimately what we're trying to do is figure out how to better understand and communicate what we do and why it matters. Data is an incredibly important tool in that toolkit. And I think that, no one is really sort of, hearing conversations about data these days and saying that's not important. I think what's great about the data maturity assessment and great about conversations like this is to really say, hey, start the journey. There are a lot of people who are going down this road together. And here's some common language and common tools that can help you not feel alone in this lift, for these community level, initiatives, projects, missions that we all care so deeply about.
Absolutely. Ginger, do you have anything you wanted to chime in there? I saw you join us.
Yeah,
as well.
I just there's so many things I could chime in on about, but I think that the demystification is so important because we have such amazing talent within our sector that's passionate and works, dawn till night to make sure that people can access food or go to college or take their medicine or have a home, right? And I remember feeling like, I know I'm supposed to be able to talk about data and technology, and I don't know about data and technology. And I felt like a fool. And I feel like I can say this now because like I talk about data all of the time, but like I think that one of the driving forces is like we all can do this, right? So to my colleagues who are leading Habitat for Humanity in Philadelphia, like Corinne, you can do it, right? Like we can do this together. Let's be smart about how we share our resources. Let's be really smart and bring in some top talent to think about how we pool and build resources together. Like there is great opportunities for communities to be smarter about how we share services. And it's not just accounting services, but how about legal? How about governance? How about technical infrastructure? Like there's great opportunity there. And I guess it's just, none of us are alone, and do not be afraid to jump into this conversation. and use the assessment to help bring along your colleagues, whether that's your board, whether that's your executive director, whether that's your program, your public policy teammate who doesn't really think about data because they're thinking about, policy and systems change all the time. This is an opportunity, again, it's not the end point, but it's a starting point, and it allows us to move in a shared direction. But I think the demystification, like, we're all going to do this. It's going to be hard. It's going to take some money. And so to our philanthropic partners, we got to change how we think about funding, right? If you believe in data science and iteration, then we're not going to have all the answers all of the time. We have to actually iterate and learn. So it's a whole sectoral shift in how we're thinking, and it's super exciting. And I just so appreciate learning from all of you, and just want to make sure that we can help, right? You can do it, we can help.
Absolutely. Tennille, did you want to jump in there as well?
Yeah, to just co-sign everything Ginger said. You don't need a PhD to do this. I think it just requires a lot of focus and really like thoughtfulness in the beginning of the process. If you really think about what are we hoping to learn, what are we hoping to answer, that can get you so far. It doesn't require another degree to make it happen. So I love that idea of just demystifying. And I think the tool is a really great way for new organizations or organizations just starting their data journey to kind of see where they are and hopefully one day where they can go.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, a few years ago, I was able to run a fellowship program for a couple of years. We actually brought in, people that didn't have formal training in data science, and built some of those skills and some of that capacity. And the work that they were able to accomplish is tremendous. I don't see the biggest challenge, at least in this the sector, being one around talent right now. I think it's like we have a lot of underutilized and underdeveloped talent. We need to nurture that. We need to develop that. But we have great, smart, brilliant people in organizations all across the sector that absolutely could be pushing your data maturity forward. And I think it's just about how do we help support them and engage them. And, Paul, I think you're absolutely right. Like, how do we build some of those peer learning opportunities, right? Like, if you're the only data person in your organization, like, work with groups like Data.org or your local collaboratives, or come to events like Good Tech Fest and things, and find that community of practice and others that are hoping to learn with you. I just want to say a huge thank you to our panel. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a bunch of questions, or several questions, and Ginger, I'd love to return with you to answer some of those questions. But Tennille, Eliza, Paul, thank you so much for joining us and the work that you all are doing. It's so great to have you as partners. All right, Ginger, we have a few questions about the assessment. And I'd love to maybe start with this question around the target audience for the data maturity assessment. Who are you hoping utilizes this tool?
Yeah, so it can be that program manager, program coordinator, program director who sees so much opportunity to use data, but needs to drive change within your team. It can be the lone data analyst who's wondering, how the heck am I gonna, bring my colleagues along? It can be the executive director who knows the potential and has been investing for years, but believes that they need to invest more. And so the audience is for whoever is thinking about how to do this holistically. And then, the audience for the actual assessment is to who do you need to bring along. And so that's how we're thinking about it. So it really is pretty overarching. I want to point out, this will not have all your answers. Right. This is a snapshot. It's a step in the right direction. And so to the question around, is there a qualitative component? I would love for there to be a qualitative component. So, this is our MVP, so not yet. I think it depends on what we hear from our colleagues in the space about what they need. So if that's something that folks are interested in, like, let's hear that, right? So we will build and mature the data maturity assessment in a data-driven way, which means we want to continue to learn and iterate alongside our colleagues within social impact. So I think the audience varies depending. It's the data drivers. It's whoever's driving that organizational change. And in terms of qualitative assessment, this can be a great companion piece to some more strategic work. That's certainly an option, and certainly one that we're open to exploring with partners.
And is the data maturity assessment focused purely on social impact and not-for-profit organizations, or could it be applicable to more traditional for-profit organizations?
That's a great question. I would love our for-profit partners to take a look-see and provide some feedback on that. I think it's meant for impact-oriented organizations. It's meant for impact organizations. So tax status is much less important than reason for being. We have began to talk with some government agencies who are also interested in the tool. So that's exciting, because if you think about the systematic and scale of change, there's certainly great opportunity to improve.
And could you talk some about how the data that's collected is being utilized? I have
Yeah.
a couple questions around, are you collecting the data? How's it being utilized? And in particular, does it help inform, kind of the scoring methodology and things like that over time? Will that kind of improve as more people respond?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, of course, we took a very, hard look at how we wanted to use the data that we collected. So first and foremost, your individual data will never be shared without explicit consent. So that's first and foremost. Now, on the aggregate level, we are interested in trends in the market. And I should say, my privilege of being here at Data.org is I get to look at the social impact sector overall. And there is a wide gap in terms of what we know about social impact as a market and how we should be thinking about its maturation. So there is value to saying like, hey, we 1,000 organizations took this assessment, and 50% of them show it to be extremely vulnerable as it relates to security. Right. And so let's go talk to our private sector colleagues that are building pretty secure systems and see how we can help. Right. So there are opportunities to draw insights from the aggregate level, but again, not individual level.
Awesome. And one more time for those in the back, where can they go to access this tool and other resources like it?
Yeah, go right to that chat, because I think my colleagues put it in there a couple lines. Yeah, so certainly go to the chat, certainly sign up for our newsletter, take the assessment. And if you have questions or if you need help, like this is also an opportunity to raise your hand. I think that there's the last thing I'll say is there's lots of people who want to help drive this progress and drive this transformation. And part of the role of Data.org is to be, that friendly matchmaker to say, hey, you need this. Let's get you to a place that you can really be able to take advantage of it. The last thing we want to do is match you with a tool that's, far away. Right? Like you really, like one of the things that Elisa said that I really appreciated is about logical incrementalism, right? We want to build for what we need today, but we want to have an eye on what's possible for tomorrow. But just be incremental in terms of how you're thinking about your progress. But definitely go to the Data.org website, definitely take the assessment. You can have your colleagues take it too, compare notes, right? That's another thing. Our goal is slowly that we could have an organizational assessment where multiple teammates can take it and you can get a synthesis score. We're not there yet. That'll be the next iteration, but it is also very curious to see how different folks within the organization view their data maturity.
Oh, that's great. And I do think like it'll be so interesting to see kind of across an organization how different people view the same organization's maturity. And I do think, though, the insights, kind of those sector level insights will be so valuable. I've been in this space for, a while now, and it's so hard to get like great like market data about where are organizations, what are the greatest strengths and the areas of weakness that we have as a sector. I love the focus on governance and data security and things that you all are providing via this assessment, because I think those are areas that are so important to the work that we're doing as social sector organizations and a little bit underdeveloped. So it'll be interesting to see as we collect more and more data through this assessment, see some of those trends in some of those areas. And so I just want to say a huge thanks to Ginger, Data.org, for helping host today's webinar. for developing this assessment tool. For all of you on joining us online today or watching this in the future, go check out the assessment. It is a really valuable, I think, valuable tool for organizations just to understand and see themselves on this journey, and to recognize that it is a journey. No matter where you are, you're going to be able to effectively figure out what's that next step that we can take. And I think the assessment does a really great job of saying, here's where we think you are. And then here's like a few resources and a few guides and things to take a look at to help you kind of grow to that next level. And so I think that's it's such a fantastic resource. I'm super excited about all the work that data.org is doing. So glad for you to join me today.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thanks everyone. I think we're all set for today. Be sure to check out data.org and the maturity assessment tool. Thanks so much for joining us.